Hey there guys, what is going on? Sai here and welcome back yet again to another Gran Turismo 7 setup video for the channel. Today guys, we've got something a little bit wild. It's the Pagani Huayra, and this thing honestly took me a little bit by surprise of how well it does actually handle. Straight out of the box, fully maxed out, this thing doesn't handle bad at all. It's quite friendly to drive. It does suffer a little bit from understeer, but nevertheless it's still a really good car to drive. Fully maxed out with just under 1,000 horsepower. With my particular setup, I'm using a different exhaust silencer. I'm not using the racing one, just for the sound and the looks purposes. But if you do get this one fully maxed out, it will be over 1,000 horsepower, which is absolutely insane. But let's go ahead and jump into the setup. So for this particular car, I actually have a few setups here available for about 6 in total. So we've got a maxed out unrestricted setup, we've got a 600 pp setup, 650 pp, 700 pp, 750, and also 800 pp. So let's go ahead and start with the maxed out one. One thing as well before we begin with this with the setup guys is also the way to drive this car is to brake a little bit earlier than normal and keep it on a slightly higher gear so you don't really get the back end out as much. That way the car remains stable, you brake in time and you get the power out and you can just use all of that power to accelerate out of a corner. Apart from that, this car is pretty easy to drive, it's quite forgiving as well, so it's really awesome to have a very high powered car that is not too difficult to drive. Now let's go ahead and look at the setup. So for the tyres on this maxed out setup, you want racing soft tyres. Suspension is fully customizable with body height adjustments set to 55 and 70. Anti-roll bar is set to 7 and 8. Damping ratio compression is 29 and 31. Damping ratio expansion is 48 all around. Natural frequency is 2.60 at the front and 2.80 at the rear. Negative camber angle is 1.0 at the front and 0.5 at the rear. Toe angle is neutral at the front and in 0.20 at the rear. Moving on to the differential, you want fully customizable diff, and with the initial torque set to 5, acceleration sensitivity to 15, and braking sensitivity to 30. I have tried the electronic LSD as well on this car. That you can get the active LSD controller. It's not bad, but it doesn't give you that full control that the fully customizable LSD gives you. Moving over to aerodynamics, you will have the 350 at the front, full downforce there, and you want 490 at the rear. ECU set at 100% and power restrictor is at 100%. Customizable is fully customizable racing transmission, and what you want to do is have that set to 420 kilometers an hour. That's the preset setting there. And I'll just bring up the transmission, the individual manual transmission ratios there. Now moving on to the performance upgrade parts, what you want to do here is have the high RPM turbocharger equipped with the anti-lag system set to strong, racing intercooler. You can have the racing air cleaner, semi-racing silencer. You can have the racing one that brings the power up and the PP up a little bit, as you guys can see. Honestly, it's your personal preference there. I actually just prefer the look and the sound of the semi-racing one, so that's what I went with. Exhaust manifold is racing, braking system is all racing, and your brake controller is set to -1 or 0. You'll have the clutch and flywheel set to racing, and these are the upgrades that you, the engine tuning upgrades and the bodywork upgrades here as well. So let's go ahead and move over to the other setup. So we've got the 600 pp setup, so we'll have racing hard tyres, suspension differential stays the same. I had to remove the downforce as well to its minimum setting here, just so I can fit it into the 600 pp class. So the output for the ECU is at 70%. I have to give it 195 kilograms of ballast with the ballast position at -50. Power restrictor is at 70%. The transmission ratio on this one is set to 300 kilometers an hour, but I did have to move the final slide down to 3.845 just to give it roughly about 280 kilometers an hour top speed. That's what you really want on this particular car, because you obviously lose about half of your power there. So for your turbocharger, nothing on there. Anti-lag system is off. intercooler normal, normal, normal on the air cleaner silencer and exhaust manifold. You do keep your racing brake systems. You honestly, you really, even with this low power, you still need those to stop on time. The brakes on this car aren't particularly that good. Brake controller stays the same, and racing flywheel and clutch. Moving over to the 650 pp class setup. So you want to have the sports soft tires, suspension differential downforce stays now the same as the maxed out setup one. ECU is at 70%, ballast at 150 with minus 50 balance positioning, and 70% on your power restrictor. Once again, the preset speed is 300 kilometers an hour for your transmission, and the manual adjustment there from the final gear is 3.638. Moving over to your parts, you want to have the anti-lag set to weak, you want to have the racing air cleaner, sports silencer, normal exhaust, racing brakes, and racing clutch and flywheel. Now let's move over to the 700 pp class setup. So sports soft tires once again, everything stays the same on the suspension, differential, and your downforce. Your ECU output is at 75% while the power restrictor is at 70%. No ballast this time around. The top speed is set to 310 kilometers an hour. You want to have the high RPM turbocharger equipped on this one. Anti-lag system set to strong. You want to have the racing intercooler, racing air cleaner, semi-racing silencer, and uh, racing exhaust manifold, racing brake systems, and racing clutch and flywheel, and the brake balance stays the same. Moving on to 750 pp class. So for this one, you want racing hard tires. Uh, Suspension differential downforce stays the same. Your ECU output is at 89%. Power restrictor still at 70%. Top speed is preset to 330 kilometers an hour. And high RPM turbocharger equipped with anti-lag system set to strong, racing intercooler, racing air cleaner, semi-racing exhaust, and racing exhaust manifold, racing clutch and flywheel, racing brake pads, and your brake bias as it is. Moving over to the final class setup, which is the 800 pp class, racing hard tires on this one, suspension, differential, downforce stays the same, ECU output is at 100%, your power restrictor is at 95%, your transmission speed is preset to 370 kilometers an hour, and everything else stays the same. So now it's time to take out the maxed out unrestricted setup around Catalonia to give you guys a reference to what this thing can do. Enjoy.